Welcome back, everyone. We are here today on our Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday show of the week. Looking forward to tackling this body transformation topic, and it is based on fasting for weight loss. So if your goal is to lose weight, and by that, of course, I mean body fat, and the reason we don't want to lose muscle is that each year, believe it or not, as we get older, we're losing about 1/2 pound of muscle per year. That's the average. And again, really, really important to look at that because it affects women even more than men. So today we're going to talk about not losing the muscle. Again, we don't need to get bulky or anything like that. I'm going to talk about that. But what I'm saying is the more we can lose the body fat to a healthy weight, I'm not talking about getting emaciated or too thin, which we're actually going to chat about just a bit today. But by losing weight, get to a healthy body weight, because the more I've been studying anti-aging and longevity, which is like consuming a lot of my time lately, the more I realize that one of the absolute best things that you can do, if not the number one thing that you can do, is to get to healthy body weight. And again, I know that seems to be controversial now, and I don't want it to be, but I always look at things from a health perspective. So I'm not trying to say anything that is sensitive or hurtful to anyone. What I'm trying to do is help you live the longest, healthiest life possible. And it seems by all of the literature that I've read, and I'm very unbiased, I look at everything, there is almost not a single study that shows that lowering your body weight to a healthy body weight is actually going to improve overall longevity, especially through the age of about 65, 70. After that, believe it or not, just having a little bit higher, a little bit higher weight, meaning like not on the lower side, can actually help with bone density and longevity, just because you don't want to get too frail. And we'll talk about that as well. So there is always a happy medium. There is a sweet spot, and the same goes for fasting. So what I want to do today, and this is again from private practice, I've been doing this now, I've been working with clients part-time, of course, while I was in undergrad in college in the late 90s, and then full-time from 2000 on. And what I want to share with you is that we've been able to work with well over now 250,000 people and 250,000 appointments completed by my team and myself. And so the data is there. And that's why I don't like leaving big decisions in life about your health up to chance or like the latest and greatest research. Okay, we'll look at the latest and greatest research and we'll view that in terms of what have we seen over the past 22 plus years with 250,000 appointments. Plus, what does Ayurvedic medicine say? What does TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, say? What about bioregulatory medicine from over in Europe? What about traditional naturopathy? And so we blend all of that with kind of state-of-the-art functional medicine lab testing, all the data that we have for over 2 decades. And then also, yes, what does the latest and greatest say? So the latest and greatest research, and so I want to share that with you, actually shows on total overall caloric restriction. And so I want to share with you why that's related to fasting. Because there's a lot of people that are fasting from 12 hours. So they're doing 12 hours, which is the minimum, by the way, for fasting. So let me just clarify that. If you haven't heard my previous shows in intermittent fasting, I definitely invite you to check those out. Those are at stephencabral.com/podcast. And you can just kind of scroll through the images at the top and you'll see a show just on intermittent fasting. So if this is a topic that interests you, we have shows on all sorts of different topics. So, and I can also link those up to you for you today. All the links will be at stephencabral.com/2532. So people are fasting from 12 hours. That's the minimum to be considered intermittent fasting, to 16 hours, to 20 hours, or 23 hours. So all of those, right? And so the 23 hours would be, okay, the 1 meal a day people that are doing that. And they're saying, okay, I'm seeing phenomenal and fantastic results from that. So we need to look at that. Okay, well, how does that also enter into total caloric restriction? So some of the interesting reads that I've done lately, again, on longevity, is that whenever, and these are obviously, I shouldn't say that these are human models yet, because you can't do this type of potentially dangerous research on humans before it's been proven out on animals first. And most of the time it's very difficult and lengthy to do with humans because of a longer lifespan, which, you know, we can do with lab rats because the life expectancy would be about 3 years, right? So you can start to get these studies done within a decade rather than, well, over 100 years of a human. So what I want to share with you is this. We've known in even animal models, so dogs, that when you decrease their total caloric intake for the majority of their life, you're looking at an increase in lifespan by 10+%. So in humans, that would be adding like another 7 years, 8 years to their life. Pretty impressive. I mean, like that's pretty phenomenal. But there are caveats to that. So you can go too low. What they've found is that actually, they've done this in cats as well. By going 40% less caloric reduction, the cats became more emaciated and actually didn't lead to longer lives. It did improve overall health span, which I'll be talking about that on future shows. So less of the cancer and heart disease and those types of things as they aged, but it didn't lead to increase mortality, meaning like, I shouldn't say it didn't lead to increased longevity. They had essentially the same mortality rate. So we're beginning to find that there's a sweet spot with caloric reduction of around 20 to 25% is what it seems to be right now versus much more, which it makes sense to me because if you become emaciated or too thin, it actually weakens the overall body and immune system. So the bones become weaker, the muscles become weaker, and it doesn't mean that you need big muscles or anything like that to live a long time. It's not the case by any means, and I'll do future shows on growth hormone and longevity and all those things, and I think you'll find it pretty fascinating, as I did, as to, is there a sweet spot for growth hormone as well? So the thing is this, we do want to decrease total calories per day, but we don't want to become too thin. If we become too thin, weaken bones, metabolism, immune system, and overall more frail. And that can, again, lead to what I mentioned earlier, falls, which can put people into assisted living, and life quality can start to go down, and then typically people die younger. And so that's important to look at that. So now when we're looking at the 1 meal a day, and that's because that's caloric restriction, right? Most people, not everyone, I understand, but most people are not going to sit down and eat 2,000 calories at a meal of healthy food. Because if you're doing 1 meal a day, you're doing that most likely for a reason. Now, I know some people go all out with this. I know some athletes that go all out with this, but what I want to share with you is this. Most people are saying, okay, well, I'm going to eat healthy foods then. So if you're sitting down, you're eating, 2-3 cups of your veggies, you're eating your protein, you're eating some healthy fat, you're most likely not going to eat 2,000 calories at that meal. You might, there's no doubt about it. But then I also tell people, do you really want that large amount of food before bed? Because I share the research with you. And I would love for you to check out this show next if you haven't already. It's episode 2512, but I'll link it up today. So head on over to StephenCabral.com, StephenCabral.com/2532, and I'll link it up. It's should you skip breakfast or dinner? And I think it's surprising for most because it's counterintuitive, but I give you all the research in it, and the research is sound. It is sound. So you don't want to mess with this one. Okay. So the thing is this. So you're most likely becoming a little bit hypocaloric, which when you're lower calories when you're younger, you don't lose as much muscle mass, you don't lose as much bone mass because you're younger. You have a stronger metabolism, your body has more vital reserves, so you're not burning through all of your antioxidant capacity, your body's ability to create that in the first place, your methyl factors like your B vitamins, etc. So it's important to look at that because a lot of people in their 20s and early 30s are teaching things that are not able to be done by people in their 40s and beyond. And that's because there is a transition phase in the 40s as hormones begin to become a little bit lower. It's also why if someone's on anabolic steroids and growth hormone, it's tough to be giving advice of what you're doing to others that are on those same substances because their protein synthesis, like their body's ability to use protein and nitrogen synthesis, all those things are just nowhere near the average individual of their age. It might be like half the capacity, maybe less. And so we need to be careful with the advice of what you can do with your 20 and get away with it when you're 20. So for example, here's a good one, and it's getting now into the fasting points. So if you are in your 20s and you're doing 1 meal a day, okay, it may have very little effect on your thyroid and your overall stress levels potentially, right? Okay, so when you are in your 40s and even mid-30s for women, and I would say any age, because again, we've done tens of thousands of these hormone tests, that after about 4 to 6 weeks of either super low carb or a longer intermittent fast, about 16 plus hours, we see women's thyroid levels go down. What does that mean? Well, it shows up on their stress, mood, and metabolism test, which you can do right at home, as an increase in TSH. So they might normally have a nice healthy level of a 1 for their TSH, right? And now all of a sudden it's like a 2.5. You go to your PCP and they're like, oh, no big deal. It's within range. It's 0.5 to 5. You're good, right? Well, you're not good. Anything above a 2 for a TSH is suboptimal. It's showing a larger amount of stress in the body, a greater call for thyroid. And so we see someone that's going to start having the symptoms of lower thyroid, right? Just in this case, functionally lower thyroid. Not enough to be diagnosed with, hypothyroidism, right? So what are we seeing? Oh, we start to see the hair, skin, and nails get a little bit drier, a little bit more brittle, maybe a little bit more brain fog, sometimes dysregulated menstrual cycle, sometimes an elevation in cholesterol, oxidized cholesterol, sometimes the cold hands and feet. Like, we start to see all the things of low thyroid, and yet for a medical doctor, they'd be like, oh, it looks fine. But no, in naturopathy and functional medicine, we don't see that as fine. No, not at all. We see that as the body's under a greater amount of stress. Because it is, right? It's saying, I'm missing a food group. Hey, everybody, I'm missing carbohydrates. People say, well, carbohydrates don't need to be eaten. That's not necessarily true at all. Try finding another food that does the job of a carbohydrate in order to improve leptin levels, ghrelin levels, tell the body it's okay not to store body fat, all those things. You might say, well, protein can be used for that. It can, but it has to go through a process to convert itself to a carbohydrate in the first place. So that takes work, energy, and it's putting you, especially if you're hypocaloric, in a greater state of stress. So it's like, why can't you eat some carbohydrates? I'm like trying to really get that out to the general public. If you taking in protein is going to be converted anyway to glucose, can we just have some foods that would create that in the first place? Again, I'm going to save that topic for another day. I've been talking about that for a while. But anyway, let's just say this. Regardless of how you feel on carbohydrates, there's a greater stress in the body. So the longer your fast, the lower your calories, and the lower your carbohydrates, the greater there is of a stress in the body. Now, you can get along and get away with that much, much easier when you're in your 20s and 30s. Your metabolism is much stronger. Your body's ability to adapt to stress is much stronger. And the reason is that when you do the longer fast, and especially when you're expending energy, if you're not expending energy, not a big deal, right? But most people, they commute to work, they're getting the kids ready in the morning, they're stressed, right? So when you're stressed, you expend energy. Some of that is going to be a percentage burned from glucose, some of it from amino acids, some of it from fatty acids, ketones, et cetera. Okay, so here's what I want to share with you, though. The stress in your body becomes greater and harder to manage the older you are. Can you manage it? Absolutely. 100% you can. But what happens is this. If you're already prone to gaining weight and having difficulty losing the weight, you may already be prone to higher elevated cortisol levels, which can store body fat, which can raise glucose levels, which can raise insulin levels, which can store body fat. You might be more prone to functionally lower thyroid levels. You might have lower vitamin D levels. You need vitamin D for your immune system, for all these different things. So what I'm saying is you might already have dysregulated hormones in the first place. So if by doing a longer fast, by going hypocaloric, by maybe even going low carb for too long, again, I believe in low carb. Not that I'm against that, but it's for a finite period of time before we start to ease them back in. And so what I'm sharing with you is this. If you're already prone to someone with dysregulated hormones and metabolism, a greater stress is only going to make that worse in the long run. It's why some people do really well on low carb and keto and longer fasts for like 4 weeks, 6 weeks, maybe even 12. And then all of a sudden they're plateauing and they're worse off than they were before. And the reason is it's a greater stress on the body. So when deciding what is the ideal window for fasting, like what is the best form of fasting for weight loss, we have to say to the individual, what is the end goal? If the end goal is to lose weight, what do we need to do? We need to tell the body that it's not in survival mode, that it's not producing massive amounts of stress hormones. So my recommendation is at least 12 hours, no doubt about that, but we need to get food into the body to not increase stress as we become stressed during the day, as we ramp up the body during the day. It's also why for a lot of individuals, having coffee on an empty stomach first thing in the morning is not the best idea. It can actually spike glucose levels on its own. And again, if you don't believe me, that's okay, I understand. But understand that if you take in caffeine and it creates more norepinephrine or adrenaline, which then leads to more cortisol production, what happens? Well, glucose, whether you eat any breakfast or not, is brought into the bloodstream. So now you have elevated blood sugar levels. Okay, what happens when you have elevated blood sugar levels? Your body increases insulin, hopefully, right? Insulin does what? It's going to store that body fat. It's going to store that glucose as body fat. You just did it to yourself, right? You did it to yourself. Now, does it happen to everyone? No, but you can test that with a simple glucometer at home, a continuous glucose monitor, whatever you'd like. You can put these things to the test. So what I'm trying to share with you is this. As you get stressed, as you start to ramp up your day, it may be best at that point to break the fast. Something that enables your body to blunt cortisol, right? And then have your coffee after that. So cortisol is blunted by carbohydrates, mainly, right? Does it mean you need to sit down to a big carb breakfast? No, it should be balanced. It's not meant to spike your blood sugar levels. So I won't even share exactly what we do in our practice. I don't want to go through all of that right now. I can't actually set up links to that from this podcast. But what I want to share with you is this. You can do a 12, you can do a 14, you can do a 16-hour overnight fast. You absolutely can. I have not seen many people in their late 30s, 40s, and beyond do well with a 1 meal a day program. And I podcast on OMAD, 1 meal a day. So I'll link that up today at stephencabral.com/2532. Now, how do you do a 16-hour fast, though, when you are looking to, get started with your day and you will have stress? The thing is, it has to start earlier the night before. That's one of the secrets. So we teach this in our Fatlocity system. You don't even need to know what any of that means. You're welcome to check it out. It's just stephencabral.com/Fatlocity. But I'm going to share with you exactly what we do for the fasting component of it. All right, so here's the thing. Again, we have now 20 plus years of data on this. Start your fast as soon as you can at night. So have dinner with your family, your spouse, your partner, make it as early as you can. Then we're going to count forward those 16 hours. Now, 16 is not a magical number. People are like, oh, 16 hours. It doesn't have to be. Like, honestly, it doesn't have to be. And I have a whole show on what happens to your body at 12 hours, 16 hours, 24 hours, 36 hours, 72 hours of fasting, right? So you can see the different things. 16 is not a magic number. It's really not. It's closer to 24 if you're looking at deep autophagy. It's at least 18. So, but the people going through this every day, it's not needed. And I share that on a separate show. So what I'm saying to you is this. Let's say you start your fast at 6 o'clock at night. All right, well, 6 hours to midnight. Another 8 at 8 a.m., we're at 14 hours. So you're at 14 hours, which is most of the people in our practice are doing 14 hours. It seems to be the sweet spot for most people. But we do have many people go to 10 a.m., right? So 10 a.m. now is their 16-hour fast. And so that is actually when they're breaking their fast with breakfast. Then around 1:30 p.m. Or 2, they have their lunch, and then they finish their dinner at 5:36. And so you can still get in 3 meals per day, which means what? You're hypocaloric only if needed, but you're also getting in all of your macronutrients. And I don't have time to go through all of that today, but essentially your micronutrients, I should say. It's really difficult with 1 meal a day to get in all of your micronutrients. How do you get in 7 servings or more of fruits and vegetables every single day? And you can certainly do less fruit. You can do 1 or 2 servings of berries or so a day, but how do you get in then the 5 or 6 of the vegetables? That's that's a lot at 1 meal. Very, very difficult. So when you're looking at, longevity, not just body transformation, which, we don't want to help people transform their bodies and then they're, dead at 62, right? Like nobody wants that. Really, that's what a lot of people are teaching right now. These short-term thinking modalities that are not going to improve overall health span or lifespan. They're all being done for body transformation to look good, vanity-wise, in your 20s and 30s and 40s or so. I'm trying to help people achieve those body transformation goals that they have, but also live into their late 80s, 90s, and beyond. Like, that's my goal. Everybody's goal, if you're in good health, why wouldn't you want to live to 100 and beyond? That's my goal for you. So most people, 12, 14, or 16 hours. I'm telling you right now, in our practice, most people do phenomenal, finish dinner by 6. It was a change for me. I like having dinner later, but sleep-wise, if you start tracking your sleep scores, trust me, you will see the difference. Stop eating 3 to 4 hours before bed. All right, so you finish at 6, you're starting to eat at 8. That's 14 hours. That is easy to do for most people. It really is. Want to go 16? Just make it earlier, right? Don't wait until noon. Most people have gone too long. It's half the day. You're spiking those stress levels in the morning, the cortisol levels. Cortisol is a glucocorticoid, which means literally it breaks down stored glycogen, brings it in the bloodstream during a fight or flight based response. You have no control over that unless you keep the body calm. And if you do that, then fantastic, right? That's why I'm saying it can change for different people. But at the very least, get in 2 to 3 meals per day. That's plenty for most people, and you'll be able to get your micronutrients as well with balancing the right amount of calories for you. So this was a lot on today's show. I try to pull it all together, but there's a lot of other shows that I've done. They're all completely free at stephencabral.com/podcasts. And we have specific ones on weight loss, specific ones on intermittent fasting. We will link those up at stephencabral.com/2532. Hopefully this was helpful. If it was, feel free to share it with anyone you believe it could serve. Take care, everybody.